Hey guys, on September 11th, 2001, 2,753 people died in the World Trade Center. Around 16,000 people made it out safely on that dreadful day. Thankfully, 99% of those stationed below impact zones made it out safely. And one of those guys is with us today in studio, Dennis Lacoste. His name I mispronounced at least once in this episode. I apologize to you, Dennis. I just want to say right up top how appreciative I was of Dennis's candor and willingness to relive that dreadful day, as it's still difficult for him to do so. I want to honor him. His vibe and demeanor was a blessing to be around. If you're a podcast listener, you may want to take this one in on YouTube as we post all of our episodes and video versions over there. He's a man who's endured a lot of significant hardship, starting in his childhood. You'll hear more about that here in a second, but he's an example of one whose faith transcends his life's circumstances, a practice we could all benefit from. And thus hearing him share his faith on this episode has the capacity to be a faith builder for all listeners and watchers on YouTube. I know it did for me. So as we reflect on 9/11, we remember the words of our Savior: "In this world we will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." Now that's good news. It's been 24 years since that day, and we truly will never forget.
Me and two of my brothers worked on the 25th floor.
And the planes hit around what floors?
So they were around 87,
Okay.
86, 87 on that building. So yeah, we got up there and I was like, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. And I started making my way actually to turn. And that's when I felt and heard the building get hit. And I know they were made to sway, but it was moving so much that my initial response was, once I saw some stuff blowing past the window behind a few guys, I turned to my brother and said, "Kevin, we got to get out of here. This building's coming down." So when we came out of the stairwell, and it looked like we were in the basement of the building, but it was actually the lobby of the building. It was just blown, like there was no glass in the windows or the doors, the revolving doors. Elevator doors were hanging open. You could see people, like bodies over by the doors, by the elevator. From what I understood, the fuel from the planes went down the elevator shafts. And with that, all of a sudden people were just like, this way, that way. And I mean, it was just people running every which way. And I remember some guy going, "Come this way, cover your heads, go out this way." The feelings sometimes, they stay with you. You feel like if something shakes, there's times where, if I'm in a stairwell, I get that like, oh, okay, if something happens, where am I going? I look at planes differently. Planes to me are weapons. So I'll see planes, especially if they're flying low. I get very angst about it. PTSD, I have been certified with PTSD. Like I said, I don't think there's anyone that has the ability to say you weren't affected by that kind of stuff.
Well, it's good to be with you guys. This is fun. Y'all are fun people to be around.
You're
awesome.
fun too, Joey.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, welcome patrons and welcome Seacoast listeners and watchers. We are about to talk to Dennis Lacoste, and it's crazy. I don't always plan on doing a 9/11 episode, but if someone reaches out and says, "I know somebody who was there," it's like automatic. So we definitely, gosh, it's been 24 years, and we really will never forget everybody that was lost, and then everyone who was left with grief as losing loved ones. But I have to ask you something, Amy. So you're jumping in last minute, and you said, so we're talking 9/11 stuff, and you said you don't really remember much of it. Did you say that, or did I read it too fast? How old are you?
Hey, that I'm definitely older, but I mean, I remember stuff, but I don't remember like a lot of like, I mean, of course I remember where I was, I remember how I felt, but like, I don't know. I have, Is that bad?
No, I don't think it's bad, but my assumption is that you probably remember about as much as we do.
Yeah, that's true.
So what did you mean by you didn't remember?
I don't know.
I was like, Amy's not that much younger than me.
I see that now. Am I younger than you? I think I'm older than you.
Older?
Yeah.
Really?
Well,
I'm 48.
How old are you going to be?
I turned 48.
I'm going to be 49 next month.
Okay.
So see?
You are a little bit older.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So that's why I don't know why. I guess I thought that
I just
with
thought
my
it was...
age, I am just forgetting a lot. So I thought y'all might have something new to bring to the table that I don't know.
I've got a question for Jack about Pearl Harbor and how people talk about how big of a deal, and none of us can really relate because we weren't there, but weren't people glued to their TVs like for 2 weeks at least? I mean, in the gym, everybody's watching. I mean, you go home, you turn the TV on. Literally watching the news for 2 weeks. That's what it felt like. Do you think I'm exaggerating that in my head?
No. I was in school, and on campus, all of the TVs in the student commons building, they were just on the news anywhere you went. That is, I think for that first week when we were in our classes, we did not do anything except process and talk. And if there was a TV in the classroom, watch.
Yeah. So, Jack, with Pearl Harbor, I hear that 9/11 was kind of our modern day Pearl Harbor as far as the monumentalness of it. That's not a word, is it? Monumentalness.
I'll allow it.
Let me think of a synonym.
I'll allow it because once again this past weekend, someone else approached us in the breezeway at church, just making sure that we do actually like each other. So.
Yeah, there's a podcast listener, and I was like, see, we actually do like each other. But, Amy, I don't know if you know this. I'm pretty sure Lynn heard this. My mom one time said, that Jack guy. she went a little mama bear.
Jack guy.
She was ready to come after Jack.
I was like, it's all fun. It's all, but I've had actual people being like, that guy's intimidating. Like, how, are you okay with that? I'm like, we're having fun. He's my friend.
It's true. It's true. But anyway, enough of that.
Like I can't, so what I was telling you before this conversation, because I wanted you to know I was going to ask you this, the world was at war and Japan decided we're going to lure America into this thing. So they bomb a military base. Obviously, I realize that's a really big deal because all of a sudden America is like, oh, now we're in war. But 9/11 just seems to be a completely different category of flying planes into buildings. We're not currently in a war. The buildings fall down, killing thousands of people. It just seems different.
Yeah. Well, so Japan didn't bomb us because they wanted us in the war. They wanted us to stay out of it as long as possible. I'm going to get this wrong, and that bothers me so much, but I think basically, you know, the people who were planning the attack, their thing was, we think this will keep America functionally like out of our way in the Pacific for about 2 years. And they were right. I mean, we went to war with them almost immediately, but we weren't really, you know, the tide in the Pacific didn't start turning until like 43. So they were basically achieved what they set out to do. The problem is it was an extremely short-sighted, you know, decision. But it happened for, I mean, a whole host of reasons, including that, you know, we had said, hey, we're going to, you know, because you're invading China, we're going to stop giving you rubber and oil and all these things that they really needed. And so it was a surprise attack. It wasn't necessarily like, whoa, we have no idea, like this isn't connected to anything. There was a lot going on. But yeah, like with 9/11, I think the similarities are just the total shock. And part of this shock of 9/11 just stemmed from just sort of the enormity of it. I mean, it was, because I remember, so I was in school too. And I was a freshman, so I'd been at school for like 2 weeks. And I remember coming back from class and my RA is coming down the hall with just sort of this like look of shock on his face. And he said like, we've been attacked. And it's like, I had no idea what he meant. And, you know, went and found the nearest TV, and just kind of like the sense of like unreality. And so I think, you know, my guess would be with Pearl Harbor, it's sort of the shock and anger, but, you know, like you said, a lot of the world's at war. this is an act of war. But with 9/11, there was no lead up. There was no indicated. This is just a thing that happened, and it happened in kind of the most, I don't mean this in a positive, like a negative way, like the most spectacular way possible. Like it was an insane thing. It's still an insane thing to watch. Because every once in a while I will go back and watch old news footage of 9/11.
Yeah, me too.
And it's an insane thing to see, even though I've seen it. I mean, the first week I saw it probably 100 times. It never stops being shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want that's interesting. I wonder, because we watched the replays, and some of us saw the second plane live, so we're connected to that past. I wonder. I would think that when my kids watch it, not being connected to 2001, it's not as profoundly impactful in the same way that you just said, because I resonate exactly. Like anytime I see it, I'm like, good gosh, I still can't believe. I don't think that would register for someone who didn't live it, would just be my guess.
Yeah, no, I would completely agree. It's one of the reasons, like Jack, my oldest, he's read books. Like he's read a couple books on 9/11 because he reads like he loves history and all that stuff. But like I don't know if he's seen the video. I wouldn't show it to him though, not because I'm worried he'd be messed up by it, but because I'm worried. Honestly, I'm worried he wouldn't be messed up enough by it, and that he's too young to really understand what he's watching. And so that's one of the reasons I've never shown it to him, because I don't want him to see it until it can actually register like what you're seeing happen.
It's crazy. You look at the pictures of the jumpers and some of the footage, and that's bothersome enough. I couldn't imagine actually being there and hearing the sounds and knowing that's what it was. I guess not that you can make 9/11 a little bit lighter, but when we're not thinking about the actual events, there's a new documentary that I highly recommend. It's called American Manhunt, and it's basically how America finally tracked down Osama Bin Laden. And I mean, the whole thing was super interesting, but gosh, near the end where the soldier actually just recounts, they go in, storm in, and they work their way up, and each level, the men have different assignments of where they need to go and make sure that they take care of any of the enemies that are in that level, and they just keep working their way up. And so once they hit floor 2, they're like, well, he's got to be in the 3rd floor. And just how he says it, there was only 2 guys left, and they both get to the 3rd floor, and one of them sees somebody off to the left. And if I recall correctly, he basically dives on them because he's thinking maybe a suicide bomber, because they know that they're coming in, so they may strap a bomb, and so jumps on him. And then the other guy goes to the right and is basically like 5 feet away from Osama bin Laden, who I think is armed and is not surrendering. And so just according to this guy telling the story, the guy who actually shot him said he was a threat to me. He was a threat to my soldier, and so I pulled the trigger and killed him immediately. I'm just thinking, how does it feel to be the guy? And I'm not even saying like, wow, you must feel so awesome about killing somebody, but just imagine being the person that killed Osama bin Laden. It's just, it's a riveting documentary. So we've talked about these sorts of things before along these lines, but I'm going to ask y'all this question, and the wording is important, and I want you to react to it however you want to, pick it apart. But my question is, when it comes to Osama bin Laden, and I'll let whoever wants to jump in first jump in, are you glad that we killed him?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's the, if, I don't know why you always ask stuff that gets me in trouble. One of the
I think most people would say yeah, and I understand.
Right. I think one of the responsibilities of a nation is to protect its people, and you make it very difficult to protect your people, especially if you are a target, if everyone has the impression of, oh, well, we can do this and there are no repercussions. I think it's appropriate for a country to decide the repercussion for, wantonly killing our people is we're going to find you and kill you. One, because we have to set the standard that can't happen to our people and we're not going to let it. And two, because people like that really should be dealt with in the world in general. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Mm-hmm. How would y'all respond to that question? Yeah, agree with Jack.
Mm-hmm.
That's always pretty safe.
Yeah,
he's smart.
The smartest person I know.
Yeah, he is really smart. Besides Lynn.
Amy knows two people.
Between you three.
Lynn?
Yeah, I would agree. I think even, and with wording, do I agree with what happened? I would say yes.
At what happened as far as tracking him down and taking him out?
Yes. I don't know that I would use glad as the word. Like, am I glad? I don't think any part of the situation makes me glad that he was a terrorist, that he organized. None of it makes me glad, but do I think that was the right thing to do? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm tracking with you. It's almost like, and my guess would be that we all four of us would agree that it's not being happy about the loss of life, especially of someone who was very, very lost as far as how they saw the world and apparently full of a lot of hatred. Yeah. And I do think that is there an important line to draw that Christians don't cross as far as being able to answer that question, saying, yes, that, for safety issues and teaching the world that you don't do that sort of thing. But is there a line that, at least as believers, we don't want to cross when it comes to celebrating the death of someone in this example? Or would you just say?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I do, but on the other hand, could you think of an example of a country that is, being ruled by, like, would we be sad if would it be appropriate to celebrate if the North Korean regime fell? Yeah, I think so. I think, there's always a line, I think, in terms of like reveling in the death of another person. On the other hand, I think in my experience, like as I watch Christians talk about this sort of thing, the thing that I really don't care for is a line on the other side, which I think can go too far in the direction of, okay, you can go too far in the direction of, God loves everyone. God loved Osama Bin Laden. What a poor soul. Those things are all true. But the antidote to reveling in someone's death is not to performatively act as though you really pity them and, boy, I should seek to love this person. That can get a bit performative for me.
What do you mean by that? Because
it can be performative where it's. I think it can just. So the reveling.
How do you think Jesus would feel face to face with Osama bin Laden? Don't you think his heart would be like, that's the one that I'm going to go after. I'm going to leave the 99. I created.
The Jesus that would do that is the same Jesus that will look at people and say, get away from me, I never knew you.
We're talking about Osama in this.
I'm aware of that. And I'm just saying it's both. It's both and. It's the same Jesus. It's not necessarily wrong, in my view, to drink alcohol. But for some people need to stay away from it because they cannot handle it. Some people really need to stay away from topics like this and speaking out about them because on the one, they're going to be performative in either direction. There are people who get all like macho and be like, USA is the best. I'm glad he's dead. I wish we'd killed him sooner. Wish we could kill him twice. That's really inappropriate. I think it's possible that it's also inappropriate to treat him like a victim.
Do I sound like that?
No, you don't. I'm just saying this is something I've noticed.
Yeah.
Is in a desire to correct the first thing I said, it can be an overcorrection to we should all really seek to feel compassion towards this individual. And it's not that that's wrong any more than it's wrong to, I think, celebrate the end of something evil, but it can be performative. And I think it's really good to pay attention to, why am I engaging in this sort of reaction? And what's it doing to my soul? Does that make sense?
I think so.
If you can be performative in one direction, you can be inappropriate in the opposite direction too. And in my experience, especially I think in our culture, we're just so used to compassion and tolerance and kindness being like default virtues that we rarely stop to examine what their excesses look like. And I think that there can be an excess of pity towards to someone properly receiving what they deserve. Does that make sense?
I think, but where I'm getting hung up at is, if Osama Bin Laden was alive right now and somehow him and I were in the same room and Jesus walks in, I don't think his heart gravitates more towards me in any way when it comes to, I want what's best for both of them. I want them both free from certain things. Obviously, I think we would all agree Osama Bin Laden's a little more jacked up, right?
I think the challenge, slightly, I think the challenge with that, just even that thought, God is long suffering, right? Like what it looks like he's delaying, he's giving people a chance. And so even wrestling with, he's ordained all the set times and locations so that men may reach out to him and find him. So when your end comes, if he's good, then he's given you the time to know him. And so to say, if Jesus walked in the room and Osama bin Laden was still alive, and he knows man's heart. And so was his time enough time for him to reach out and know the Lord? And so I don't know that the argument that our level of, and I don't even know if compassion is the right word, but does God love his creation and desire, like he doesn't wish for any to perish. That is true. But he is long suffering to the point of you choosing him or not. And so I don't think it's any different if Osama bin Laden were still alive and Jesus were to physically walk in the room. Do we need to think differently about what we think of him in light of that? I think it is in light of that, because he had an opportunity and his heart was shown by his works.
I mean, could Osama bin Laden, though, be the lost sheep?
I guess
I mean, he's really lost. Like, he's one of the the most lost. I can't talk. He's the lostest.
Lostest.
Okay.
Have y'all ever realized in podcasting sometimes you can't even hear grammar? Sometimes that happens to me.
No, when you messaged Lynn, Robbie, and I earlier this week, it was like, great time talking to you guys. I'm like, man, I don't remember anything I said.
Yeah.
You're like, we talked about the flag. I'm like, oh shoot, I did talk about that.
I had forgotten about that too. Yeah.
So, like, here's a slightly different example. So I know people in my life who are friends, some former coworkers, who are not believers, who are a mess, but who I have far more compassion for than I do other people I know who are unbelievers whose lives are a mess. Because some of them actually have a heart that is oriented towards there's something wrong in my life. Like, something's not right. And they express it in like I got to fix myself. I've got to get it right. And obviously I want them to discover something else and realize, kind of what the reality is, and the reality that they need Christ. I've got other friends who have none of that. I have a lot less compassion for those people because they like the way they are. And I think the thing about fallen nature is it genuinely, there's a thing about your sin and the more engaged in it, it's like it's a dehumanizing thing. And I don't know, this is probably a flaw, but I don't have the same compassion for everybody. And I have a lot less compassion for friends of mine who basically, like, if I had to say something to them, I'd say, like, listen, like, you need to bend the knee to God, or frankly, I think he should kill you. Because you are profoundly dishonoring your family. You are a terrible father. You're a bad husband. You're not a good employee. You don't care about anything but you. And you need to get right. Or frankly, God should deal with you. And to me, that would be the compassionate thing to tell them, because it's true. And like, they really need to get it together. And I've got other friends who might be worse off than those first people, but their hearts are oriented towards seeking God. And I have a lot more compassion for them. And now I'm not Jesus. I'm just me. But I don't know that we're called. I don't know that we're called to have the same kind of feelings towards everybody who's lost simply because of their lostness. Like, okay, here's an example I think about a lot about American culture. So we've all seen The Office a lot. Okay, if you guys remember.
Wait, hold on. How'd you answer?
Yes.
Okay. I had to check in on Lynn.
He's like, Lynn doesn't watch anything. Lynn knows The Office.
The first season of The Office, you were not supposed to like Michael Scott because they're basing it off of like Ricky Gervais' character in the British version. It's a hard pivot in the second season, and suddenly you start liking Michael more and more, and they give you reasons to like him. The same thing happens to Andy. The first season with Andy, you hate him. But by the end of the series, he's like one of the most likable characters, and you really like him. And one of the observations I had watching that show is like America has a real problem with needing to like people, and we just don't like unlikable people. We need to find, like, if they're not a straight up villain, we have to find something to like about them. I think that is admirable, but also can lead us to some unhealthy ways of viewing other people and some ways of, frankly, misunderstanding what sin is and how it works.
Yeah.
So
I guess some things that I think, I'm not saying you're not considering this, but I didn't hear it when you were talking, is let's just take a narcissist, for instance. I hate it for narcissists. Like, it's a lot of therapist opinions that there's no solution for a narcissist outside of a miracle. That nobody chooses to be a narcissist. That's a personality disorder. Another thing that I would bring up is just take Bin Laden, for instance. What if he was adopted by a great family in another country and raised with values and was just completely separated from the sort of culture that he was brought up in? Like, in other words, even Osama Bin Laden didn't choose his upbringing, the hatred that was poured into him. So in some way, shape, or form, I think that, and I'm just going to say this, and I probably don't believe how it sounds. I think in some way, shape, or form, we're all victims of a fallen world. We're all affected. We're all damaged goods that's in need of mending, in need of a savior. And I don't think anyone, there's no limitations on how far someone can go if they're not rescued. So
I think that's true, but I also think that God is good. And so even in the sense of the narcissist, they have a personality disorder. They can't control the chemical, whatever is going on there. Is God good? Because you're like, outside of a miracle, yeah, maybe outside of a miracle. But at the end of the day, has God made a way for man to be right with him? And is that opportunity available for everyone, from Osama bin Laden to a narcissist? And if the question is, well, they just can't control it and there's no way that they could ever be different, then that means the cross wasn't enough. And I just don't believe that.
Yeah. And also, just like the narcissist, or like I didn't choose any of the sins that I tend to struggle with. Like I was born with those, like some inherited traits and some life experiences that I didn't choose to be a part of, but happened to me. So no one really chooses a lot of what they struggle with. Sometimes we do, but I mean, frankly, a lot of times we don't. Even if we choose something we struggle with, we don't necessarily choose how we deal with it, because that's based on who we are as people. And so that's one thing. But the other thing is like I'm not saying no patience towards you. I'm just saying that I really have no patience for is the like he was just a product of his upbringing. It's like, yeah, it's amazing how many Muslim men have managed not to commit acts of mass murder.
Yeah, I don't think it takes away responsibility, but I do think it belongs on the table of discussion. I mean, how would I be if I was...
Sweep the table off.
Jesus is flipping the table.
I agree with that.
Oh, by the way, Amy, I'm sorry we were talking about narcissism with you sitting right there. With, like, just, you know.
She was just thinking about herself.
What I want to say about myself.
Okay, well, we are shifting from laughter to, I'm telling you, it is a very somber conversation with Dennis. Very appreciative because it was actually a pretty hard thing to share. And I don't know if excited for you to hear it is a good way of putting it, but I do think that it's impactful in remembering just what we went through as a country and what people went through as far as loss. And so it's Dennis Lacoste.
Today, our very freedom came under attack. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices. Secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. Today our nation saw evil, the very worst of human nature, and we responded with the best of America, with the daring of our rescue workers, with the caring for strangers and neighbors who came to give blood and help in any way they could. This is a day when all Americans from every walk of life unite in our resolve for justice and peace.
Welcome to the Seacoast podcast. I've got a smile on my face, but we're going to be talking about something that doesn't bring smiles to faces because I know the three of us lived through 9/11 and it's crazy. It's 24 years ago. Dennis over here, Dennis Lacoste, he actually experienced 9/11 a lot differently than Bree and I, as he was there, and we're going to get into his story. Bree, where were you? What grade were you in? I was a school teacher in the seventh. I was a seventh grade math and science teacher, and it was after first block. I think it was around 10:45 when kids were letting out, and the principal came up and said, "Hey, just letting you know, planes flew into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon." But I had no concept of what she's talking about. I'm like, okay, well, that sounds serious since the principal's coming door to door telling people, but I don't know what to make of that, until we started turning the TV on and then learning what's legit happening.
Yeah, we didn't have a clue in hindsight, we have the big picture now, but we certainly didn't then. I was in seventh grade.
Were you really?
I was in
Nice.
seventh grade in geography class. When I got to geography class, I think that's when so much had happened, and by that point, it was on the news. Teachers were rolling in their TVs on the carts, and that's when we were watching everything, and it was just unreal. I remember it so vividly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Dennis, I got a theory that I'll tell you a little bit about this. So, first of all, this isn't the first 9/11 episode we've done. So, 2 years ago, episode 59. We have another account, a Seacoaster who was there, and then a guy that does great ministry work was there for a lot of the recovery right after it happened. But I have a theory. There's no way that I know how it felt like when Pearl Harbor was bombed. My dad was in the same boat. He has no clue. I have no idea what it was like living through JFK getting killed, where my dad does. 9/11... my kids cannot fully grasp because they didn't live through it. I can, but I don't think I can fully grasp the magnitude of your experience. Wouldn't you say that's pretty accurate? Like you were there.
Yeah, what triggered me back in the day was the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember seeing that on the news and devastated when I heard it. But then it was like, I'm back out to work. Mm-hmm. And it was like those people were living what they experienced out there, but then, we're just doing our thing. So yes, it's a different feel when you're there going through it.
Well, we want to hear your story as much as you want to tell. And again, I'm not assuming that. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but we're also going back to probably one of the worst nightmares of your life, I would imagine, being there. So tell us whatever you want, and then we obviously will have some follow-up questions because it's also very interesting, that you were there.
So back on 2001, September 11th, it was a beautiful morning. And my story started out as I got up that morning and I actually was like, I think I'm going to call out today. And my wife, who is a counselor, a licensed clinical pastoral counselor, she was like, I have clients today. So why don't you, if you're going to do it, choose a day that, we can pick and do something together. Mm-hmm. So off I went to work. So I met my one brother who lived in the same town, and we all worked together. So I was one of 4 that were working in the city at that time.
You lived in the same town. What town would that be?
So that was Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. And so I would go over and meet him, and then we would ride in together. And we would go down into Exchange Place and park, and then take the path over into the bottom of the World Trade Center. So that's what we did, and we headed in. Beautiful day, and didn't think anything else, just going to work. We had gotten there, and I was what they call a money broker. So we worked in a brokerage firm, and the name of the brokerage firm was ICAP. And when you hear Cantor Fitzgerald, we knew a lot of them because we were the same type of company. We were a brokerage firm.
Gotcha. So you worked at the World Trade Center.
So I was in One World Trade Center.
And for people that know it as Building 1, Building 2.
So the North Tower was the first one that the plane hit. Mm-hmm. So we were in that building.
And what floor?
So I was on the 25th. So 25th. Me and 2 of my brothers worked on the 25th floor, just different departments. And my other brother was just coming in. He worked across the street. And he was just coming in at that time on the PATH train.
Gotcha. And the planes hit around what floors?
So they were around 87, okay. 86, 87 on that building.
Gotcha. All right. I wanted to get that image and visuals for our listeners, but continue.
Yeah. We got up there and I was doing my morning run as usual. And if you don't know what it's like to be a broker, we are on desk and we're pretty much elbow to elbow. And we have a phone. And so it was like the stock market. It's kind of loud, a lot of yelling and screaming, trying to get things done. So with that, I just finished doing my morning run and I was like, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. So I let my brother, who worked across the desk from me, know. And I started making my way actually to turn. And that's when I felt and heard the building get hit. So at that point, I will tell you that I literally kind of came to like a crouch stance because of the shake and everything.
Gosh, we're talking about 60 floors away, and it was that significant.
To the point where the building, and I know they were made to sway, but it was moving so much that my initial response was, once I saw some stuff blowing past the window behind a few guys, I turned to my brother and said, Kevin, we got to get out of here. This building's coming down.
Oh, my gosh. Now, when you said you heard it, are we talking, I'm just trying to get some context here, like the loudest sort of thunder sort of thing? Like when you're like, whoa, that was a loud one. It was that loud?
Yeah.
Gosh.
It was like a rumble. Like
I just assume that because you're so far away, it's not that loud.
Yeah.
A lot of people
would say that to me. They're like, well, at least you were on the 25th floor. And I
would be one of those guys.
And I praise God, I was like, hey, we were not the impact. But that building, like I said, just kept moving to the point where I was starting to run for the elevator. And as I'm going, I'm like feeling like I was going up a little bit of a ramp because it just kept listing and listing. So with that, I started seeing a couple ceiling tiles pop, and my mind went to, I have 2 brothers in there. I got to go find them because when they find us together, at least we'll be together.
There you go.
So I went back. I went back to the desk, And people were kind of like, trying to figure out what's going on because we had no idea what was going on outside.
Are your parents alive at the time?
Yes.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of the story is end of August, my mom had just had open heart surgery and a pig valve replaced. She had a quadruple bypass in that. And so when they were like, we need to tell her what's going on, and they had to sedate her because they were afraid, 4 boys, and no one knew at that point where we were.
Oh my gosh. As a parent, wow.
And so that was, for her, and the whole family that was involved. I mean, you figure our wives, our kids, they didn't know what was going on inside there.
Right.
And the North Tower had the cell phone tower on it. That was that peak that came up. So once that happened and we got, trying to get in touch with people, the phones weren't working. A lot of the phones weren't working. So there was no way to get in touch with anybody at that point to let them know I'm on my way out of the building or whatever. So I went back. I told my brother, hey, we got to get out of here. And there was about maybe 6 to 10 of us around the area. And they're like, all right, hang on. Let's kind of formulate what we're doing. And
you don't know what the loud noise was.
Right.
That's what's crazy. Like the guy that Fred Reed, who gave his story of 9/11 2 years ago, he said, like, as he was running away from the building, he turned to me and Roy, who was helping me with the conversation. He said, if somebody at the time would have told me, hey, what's going on is there's like a Godzilla-like monster rampaging the city, he would have been like, oh, that makes sense, because everybody was so clueless, they didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on.
And that was the scary part, right? I mean, one, I'm sitting there going, this building's coming down as we're in it. That was my feeling. And 2, not knowing what the cause was.
Right.
Back in 93, I worked across the park from that at the Equitable building when the 93 bombing happened. Now, when we heard that was a rumble, and, that was the bomb going off in the basement. And again, it was scary when you heard that because, again, you didn't know anything that shakes a building in New York. You start wondering what's going on.
Did you think of that in that moment?
So I did. It was kind of crazy because we were driving in one time, me and my brother, and I was watching planes go by the World Trade Center. And I turned to him one time and I was like, they were actually, I think it was the sheik who was getting tried or something, or they were moving him somewhere. But I was like, what would stop someone from just diverting one of those into there? And that was before it even happened. So yeah, my mind when the 93 bombing, happened, knowing that it was in the basement, and that's what we thought, you started going, something's wrong here.
Yeah.
It's just another bombing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how you got outside, obviously.
Yeah. So when we started making our way to the stairs, and as you can imagine, everyone was in the stairs. So.
And are people screaming, or are people like pretty focused?
Pretty focused.
Yeah.
It was, again, you got in and it was an eerie quiet. When we first got in, you could, there was a cloud of smoke. You could smell, which I would assume was the jet fuel. So we got in and we started making our way down, but it was one step at a time. It wasn't like you were marching, it was one step and you waited a little bit. And then
because it was so crowded?
It was so crowded.
Yeah.
So as we got in, it was an eerie quiet, and I was around, like I said, 6 to 10 of our guys from our office. And, we were just kind of like all eerily going, okay, we're just going to get out of here and find out what's going on. You started hearing rumors. It was weird because somebody, I don't know how they would find out, but someone's like, oh, it was an air conditioning unit that blew up on the building. And you're like, okay, that could be,
The game of telephone, I guess, happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like when I looked out the window, that stuff was blowing from, across the window and everything. So I was like, okay. And then we got down a little further and you're starting to hear Cessna hit the building.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a little tiny plane. That's
happened in New York, So we started getting down to like the 22nd floor, and it was like, hey, 727 hit the building. Mm-hmm. And again, you're still going, like I said, you would see the planes flying past that every day. So we got down to, I would say, about the 18th floor, and you heard another rumble, and the building shook. And with that, you're going, okay, something's not right here. They started, people are like, stay to the right, the firemen are coming up. So by then, I had gotten down to just to the 16th floor platform. And as I got there, I stayed to the right, and the firemen were coming up. And as he's 2 steps away from me, you hear another plane just hit Tower 2. So that was.
So you heard that come in?
That was that rumble, and now it's making you're going, oh wow, they're saying this plane hit us, and now my thought went, something's going on, we're under attack, and I heard it on it. He was looking at me like to this day, I could see him just staring at my eyes, and he was like, what the heck? And they just kept going up, and from that moment on, it started going, okay, we're in something bad. I remember my mind went to, there's a fire hose here. Is this door open? Because, and it's like, how many fire hoses? Where would this get me if I have to go out the window? Because, again, we're not moving fast going down the steps. And, again, not many people heard that radio in that department, area. So with that, I just started getting into survival mode, like, okay. And I was like, just trying to claim peace from God, because it was quiet in there. It got smokier as we were going down. So that was kind of like, we got hit by a plane, obviously, but then did they bomb the bottom? Because it's getting worse as we're going down.
Oh, yeah.
So we got down to about the 8th floor, and I remember there was water coming in down the steps now. A lot of women, and everyone's kind of holding on to the rail because they're in heels, and it was just like your mind wanted to go, let's get out of here, but it was like, okay, we just gotta stay calm. So there's no trampling, and that's what happened. It was eerily calm going in. So when we came out of the stairwell, and it looked like we were in the basement of the building, but it was actually the lobby of the building. And it's where we would come in from the...
Looked like the basement.
It was just blown, like there was no glass in the windows or the doors, the revolving doors. Elevator doors were hanging open. You could see people, like bodies over by the doors, by the elevator.
Like people who had jumped?
They were, I believe, in the elevator. From what I understood, the fuel from the planes went down the elevator shafts. And with that, all of a sudden people are just like, this way, that way. And I mean, it was just people running every which way. And I remember some guy going, come this way, cover your heads, go out this way. And we were heading towards the West Side Highway. We actually went out the Marriott side of the World Trade by the West Side Highway. And we're covering our heads because as you're coming out, things were falling all around us. And I remember, looking, and it looked like confetti. And as we were coming out the revolving door, the firemen were like, stand back, stand back. And as they were coming by, the fire chaplain who was killed, they just went right, he was walking by us. And then moments later was killed from what they now call a jumper landed on him outside. So he was the fire chaplain for the fire department there. And he passed right in front of us. So we made our way. I remember my brother looking down and kind of grabbing some stuff and going, what is this? And it was all the stuff that blew out from the building and the plane, and it was all up the West Side Highway. So when we got to the corner, you're walking, you're seeing, and this is the hard part that sticks in your memory was what you saw. It was a war zone. Mm-hmm. There were pieces, there were just things that didn't resemble people anymore.
Right. Yeah, so here you are in New York City, and you're witnessing what people saw in Burma in World War II.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a couple guys that were in Vietnam, and later on when we finally got together to find out what we're going to be doing as a company, he was retiring, and he said, I'm retiring, had a good life doing all this, and he said, my thing is, I feel sorry for you guys. My job in Vietnam was body retrieval. I was trained, and he goes, and that still doesn't give you the piece of what you're going to be doing, but I was trained for what I was going to see, whereas you guys went to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a haunting thing when you see that, and you know there was nothing you can really do.
Right. And you're probably hearing the sounds of people jumping and seeing people jump at some point. You're like, oh, wow, there's people jumping from the building.
So that was the thing. We went to the corner of the West Side Highway, and the buildings were right there. And as you're coming out of the building, you didn't realize what you were hearing. But then you would see, we would be standing there, and the crowd all of a sudden would be like, oh my goodness. And you would just see them. And the only saving grace for us was there was a walk thing that we would hear it, but we wouldn't see it. But we were seeing everything around us. But yeah, that was horrifying too, because you tried to look away, and then just with everyone screaming, you would turn and see that.
Mm-hmm. So you're outside. Are you guys being encouraged to just keep getting further and further away? And what was your experience when the first building fell?
So at that point, like I said, there was 4 of us. So me and my brother, who worked on the same desk, were together. My other brother, we didn't know where he went, but he managed to get on and get headed towards home. My other brother, who was on the PATH train now, he got ushered out, and when he saw where the plane was, you can't really see height-wise, he asked the police officer what happened, and he said, a plane just flew in this building. And he said, I got 3 brothers in there. And he's like, you're not getting in. He's like, I got to get in. So he was trying to get into the building, and as he's coming around, the second plane flew over his head, and he had to dodge all that stuff from falling. And then we, again, no communication. We didn't know he was looking for us. He didn't know we were looking for him. So we were standing there, and like you said, there wasn't an urgency. There was almost like, let's find out what's going on. Because again, we heard about the plane sitting, but we just didn't know.
Yeah.
So me and my brother, he's trying to get on the phone to his wife because we knew we were okay, but no one else did. So I guess probably about 10 minutes of standing out there, some guy holds up his phone and said, I got a hold of my wife. Anyone want a message? So I remember running over there and saying, call this number, tell my wife, I'm okay.
How old were you, by the way?
So I was 37.
Okay.
Yeah, so 24 years ago.
Gotcha.
And so I remember telling them that, but then you kind of forget, because the whole thing was you're in shock. We were staring, and, I kept saying, in my mind, how far do we have to run if this comes down 110 stories? And I remember people around, this is made to withstand this, and it's, we're okay, don't. And so to your point, there wasn't an urgency.
Y'all were talking about that. There are people saying those buildings aren't going to come down, and you're like, these buildings are going to come.
I kept, my mind was like, we got to get out of here. So slowly, you kind of were like, okay, we're trying to figure it out. And you started seeing the mob, the crowd, start moving up the West Side Highway a little faster than usual. And then a police officer ran by us. So now we're just doing, when you see people going, we're going up the flow with the West Side Highway. And we're going, okay, what's going on? And that's when somebody said, they believe this one building's going to fall down. So now we're headed the wrong way. We're parked in Jersey City. We have to get across the river, which is going back down towards where the buildings are. So as a police officer went by, we said, hey, do you know if the ferries are running? He said, I don't know. So with that, our only choice, what we felt, was we need to go down and see. So we turned and started heading back towards the buildings where the Winter Garden is, and that's where the ferries would go out of. So as we got closer to that, you're watching this building going, okay, are we going to make it onto the ferry? Again, there's a crowd of people there. 2 ferries are running at a time. So our mind was, just how do we get off this island? How do we get off if this comes down? By the grace of God, we were some of the last people to get on a ferry. As the ferry started, got about quarter across the waterway, and the second building fell.
Oh my gosh. So y'all saw it from the
ferry. And it was like I remember looking at the faces on the people in the ferry, and even us. I mean, you were just in shock, like we were just there,
Yeah.
like the people.
Well, what hits me too when I was thinking about this is what you guys had to feel when you're seeing this in person and you're like, thousands of people just died. Like just what like you're there and you see that and you know thousands of people just died.
Yeah.
I mean, I just couldn't imagine witnessing that and recognizing that.
That's what's hard, right? You see your name under the survivor list. You're a survivor of the World Trade Center, and it's like, how does that make you feel? I talked to Pastor Greg one time over at the Church Creek retreat, and I said, I was speaking to a group of firefighters and stuff on the silent walk at 9/11, and I said, how do I, tell them my story? I'm a survivor. A lot of them lost people, and he said, well, this is your story. This is, a lot of the firefighters would come up to me and say, we were there, but we weren't inside. Like, you have that advantage. Like, they wanted to know my story. And like you said, what was going on? But yeah, being a survivor and then looking at all the lost people. My one brother, who was the one that went a different way home, he was supposed to be on, I believe, the 106th or 107th floor. And we lost one person from our group, and she went up in his place. So he has, that guilt, the survivor guilt.
Yeah.
Later on, we got to go experience the museum when it first opened. The first day was for people that lost loved ones, and the second was for the survivors. So we tied ribbons onto the survivor tree there, and he went up to the pool, found her name, took a picture, and then said, I'm done, I'm going home. And me and my one brother went through it, and it's done remarkably well. But yeah, it's like the memories. We get around this time of the year, and it's like, you get those memories back. And
yeah, y'all, it just hit me that y'all weren't soldiers, but y'all were on the front line of a war.
Yeah.
Like, y'all were on the front lines. We weren't. Y'all had to be there, for whatever reason. Golly, man. That's I appreciate you sharing all that. You don't ever get back to normal because that's such a life-changing deal, but what has been your journey to be healthy? Like, was there PTSD? And I'm also curious, I would love to know if you or your brothers have experienced any sort of physical illnesses or physical conditions because of what y'all were breathing. I've heard the horror stories of people who are very sick who were there.
yeah, so you come out of that, and I don't think there's one person that could say, yeah, it doesn't bother me.
For sure.
I remember being in New Jersey, the church we went to up there, the pastor reached out to me and was like, would you, just tell a little bit of what you experienced at a service they were having? And I said, okay. And so I was sharing, and as we were getting ready to leave, something shook the building, and I literally fell to the ground. With that, everyone's like, are you okay? And I was like, sorry. The feelings sometimes, they stay with you. You feel like if something shakes, there's times where, if I'm in a stairwell, I get that, like, oh, okay, if something happens, where am I going? I look at planes differently. Planes to me are weapons. So I'll see planes, especially if they're flying low. I get very angst about it. PTSD, I have been certified with PTSD in the 9/11, the health care that they give. Like I said, I don't think there's anyone that has the ability to say you weren't affected by that kind of stuff. I also was diagnosed in 2015, I believe. I was the year. I ended up in the hospital for 10 days. I was having trouble. From the start of 9/11, after I had this cough, and it developed into no rhyme or reasoning, but when I cough, it sounded like bronchitis, pneumonia, and I would go and they're like, there's nothing, or, you don't have asthma, you don't have allergies. So they just back then, they just said, it's just going to be your 9/11 cough, and hopefully it'll go away.
9/11 cough.
And so in 2015, I had an episode where I couldn't stop coughing. And I was in the hospital for, I believe, 10 days. And they finally got it to stop. But when they were x-raying, they said, you have a thing called reactive airway disease. So RAD is what they call it. And they're like, we don't know what happens, but, things outside will irritate it, because you have these little nodules now. And like
9/11 related.
That's what, yeah. So 9/11. So every year I get to go and they check my breathing and they're monitoring that. My two other brothers, the brother who was with me, he died 5 years later of a massive heart attack at the age of 42.
So sorry. Yeah.
And again, he was one of those guys who he would pull over if someone was off the road and needed help. So I think that really stung him when there was nothing he could do, nothing any of us could do to help these people. It was just more of, how do we get out of here? So he died of a massive heart attack at that age. My one brother, who he ended up getting covered with the dust because he was still trying to find us, and we didn't know where he was till much later on in the day. But within a year or two, his ankles started bothering him, and they thought it was arthritis. And it turns out he had to get 2 titanium rods put in his ankles. They were deteriorating. And so it turned out it was a rare form of some cancer. And they watched his levels again. They couldn't do much about it. And then later on, they gave him a drug to try to help him out. They're still doing okay, but it's a non-curable kind of cancer. And then in 2020, my other brother was diagnosed with the same cancer. And he's doing all kinds of chemo treatment to this day.
See, talking to someone like you, it's helpful for me to remember, too, that for me, 9/11 is something we mourn, and it's a part of history. You're still suffering the consequences of it. Mm-hmm. It's like you lost a brother potentially from the stresses of that, and now cancer. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It's amazing how many people down here, since we came to Charleston, we've run into, because we try to support the firefighters. Like I said, that's burned into my image of them going up. And so they did the Charleston stair climb at the Coliseum on June 26th. And we met a lot of the firemen there. And a lot of them have health issues. Same thing, from being in the piles outside and what they were doing. So it's interesting hearing their stories and what they're going through. And again, we're grateful that 9/11 does allow you to there's compensation if you're, at that point, but they also monitor and help you get along.
We're so sorry that you went through this, and appreciative of you coming in here and telling your story, because you represent so many people who, now we can understand a little bit more of what it feels like to have survived. Like, that's not necessarily always a positive feeling. I'm going to wrap this up with a last couple of questions. Did you have any follow-up questions or anything that you're good? You're good. So you were sharing with Bree and I some other things that you had gone through, like a head injury. Mm-hmm. And then I forgot the other one, but you've been through your share. I'm curious, how has God used, first of all, what are some of the other things you've suffered through? And I mean, has God just used all this stuff to make you tough as nails? I mean, are you Rocky?
Yeah, my parents back in the day used to say, you're like a cat, you have 9 lives. So early age, I was caught on fire, like at around 8 years old.
Caught on fire?
Yeah, second, third degree burns. Back then, you used to be able to burn like garbage, and there was a whisk bottle that was capped, and it blew up, and molted plastic landed on a shirt
goodness.
and caught me on fire.
We're going to have to give so many warnings for this episode.
And then when I was 12, I was hit by a car, and I was raised Catholic back then. And so when they got me there to the hospital, they told my mom, he's got about 12 hours, call the priest. So I had my last rites given to me. I was in a coma for 12 days, cracked my neck. They were going to cut my left arm off because there was no elbow. The elbow was shattered. Compound fracture of the leg, broken pelvis in 4 places. But more so, I was bleeding internally. And even back then, the doctors afterwards, they put an ace bandage on my arm and everything else. And when it came back, they got the blood wherever to stop. The doctors would be like, told my mom, he's a walking miracle because I don't have pins. There's nothing holding me together.
Have you seen that movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis? No. You need to watch it. Maybe you're him.
Oh, man. And then later on, I was in a car accident. I have a scar on the right frontal lobe from a TBI. And again, back issues. So...
And you said the head injury poses some challenges for you?
Yeah. So that's... it's sometimes if I seem a little, I get these glitches, and so my cognitive's a little off, and my vestibular.
I can't tell anything, just for the record.
Yeah, it's mostly the mornings, the early mornings,
Gotcha.
and afternoons. If I do something, the mind's going a lot, it'll start to trigger up. I get migraines, and. But God's good. All through it, I've been kind of, like you said, God has reasons. And when I was younger, I signed up for Pop Warner football. And I wanted to play football. That's all I wanted to do at the age of 12. Well, that was diminished with the car accident. And I never thought of playing guitar. And later on, next thing you know, I'm playing guitar. At first, I was angry at God for not allowing me to do what I wanted to do. But now I play it to worship Him, and I love that aspect. Like I look at my arm and go, okay, this may have not have been there, but God had a different reason. I look at the car accident and perseverance, trying to overcome the issues that it gives me, and I always try to look for God's peace, right? And in this world, you're going to have the trials and tribulations, and it's like He's overcome the world.
That's one of my favorite verses, if not my favorite.
Yeah. And sometimes when you're going through it, even when 9/11 happened, my first thought was, why? But then He immediately put in, that there's another evil out there. There's an evil that a lot of people are like, why did God allow this? Why did God do that? And it's like, no one ever gives Satan the credit for what he did. And, God's given me the ability to kind of overcome those obstacles and, just keep praising Him. And that's where my story, people are like, you giving me some hope. And, I see you smiling after all you've been through. Yeah. And it's like, well...
Yeah, not too many people would give you a hard... we'd love you and we'd be like, man, that's too bad. But we certainly wouldn't give you a hard time if you were just kind of sad for the rest of your life. You know what I'm saying? The positivity and your joy is palpable,
Yeah. Well, my wife, being a counselor would be, there's two ways to deal with it, right? You could get bitter, which when I was hit by the car back then, I was like, why, and or you get better. And once I became a believer in Christ, He worked on me. And to this day, I'm a work in progress. I love the song, He's Not Finished With Me Yet, and Hard Fought Hallelujah. It's like, It's like when you're going through those things, it's like He gives you that peace and comfort. And
He speaks life over us and we become new.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Dennis, it's so clear too that peace has carried you and stayed with you even when you didn't know that that's what it was, God's peace, and that peace that passes all understanding. Even hearing you talk about that moment when the first tower was hit, there was a calm, it sounds like, within you.
Yeah.
And just this, okay, let's go. I got to find my brothers and I got to go.
And I think that's it normally. And believe it or not, there were people that did stay inside the building for a while.
Just thinking things are going to be fine. It's
Yeah, like
big
we're
building.
just waiting
Yeah.
for, and so we were kind of like, I think God gave me the peace to go, hey, this is coming down. It may not come down while we're in it, but it's coming down. And just getting out, like I said, everything was, there wasn't a chaos, It was like we got to a place, okay, let's sit. And I think God gave me that peace to say, okay, I'm going to get you home to see your family. And
Yeah.
Well, through your story, we do remember those who lost their lives that day, but also remember those who, this is like a real deal time of mourning because they lost family members. And so we remember all of them. Thank you so much, Dennis, for sharing your story.
well, thank you for having me.
You've been watching Seacoast Church's Things You Won't Hear on Sunday podcast. You can now become a patron of this podcast and receive exclusive content. Your support goes towards Seacoast ministry efforts and local presence. Also, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to this podcast so that you get these episodes as soon as they're released. All of this information can be found in the show notes. Thanks for watching.